Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fuse. Today, we are talking about the power of communication. Now, I know we talk about communication a lot in our communities and other couple communities, but it's a really big deal. And we might have some insights that are going to be a little bit different that you might not have thought about before. So come on in, tell your friends and family, and let's talk about it. Thank you for tuning in. You are listening to Fuse, transparent conversations for marriage, family, and relationships. We invite you to join us as we discuss topics that are thought about but not talked about. So tell your friends and family to check us out. And of course, join us on all of our socials, as well as checking out our website, fusedmarriages.com.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm well, sir. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I got one request, though, for the people out there.
Okay.
If you don't mind me asking. Hey, if y'all liking this content, right? Mm-hmm. Share it with somebody, post a comment, like it. You know what? We're just trying to help people. That's our main goal.
Yeah.
We're helping ourselves too in the process, right? So we ain't say we got everything figured out, but hey, we try to share. Hopefully y'all can share y'all's insight as well. We appreciate those that are watching. But yeah, if you see somebody that could benefit from this or think they benefit from topics that we're talking about, share it with them.
Yes. I concur. And today's topic in particular might be helpful to you or someone you know, because today we're getting into conversation. Our conversation is the power of communication. Now, that is a topic that a lot of people revisit and talk about, and even we have talked about it. But as you grow in your relationship, you start to see the areas in which you might be weak, or areas that you can consistently improve. And communication is an area that all of us can consistently improve because it is really powerful. Anything you wanted to say on that before we jump into the first point?
Wow, I know that's loaded, right? Because everybody talks about communication and
right.
Why relationships break up, this, that, and the other. I think even the idea we chose to have the title "The Power of Communication" to signify like communication is powerful, right? Maybe trying to pulling some layers on back what that means. Maybe not in totality, but I think we're going to get into some good discussions on this one.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. So the first thing, as you were kind of prepping this, is, we come from a spiritual perspective, but we recognize that those principles apply no matter what you believe. But that communication is a biblical, godly foundation for the relationship. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So this for me, and hopefully for others that may be similar like me, right? It really hits home in the way of that I didn't realize it was biblical as far as the communication piece. And what I mean is I'm naturally, I'm going to say that I believe that I thought I was quiet, reserved, didn't have to say much, but did a lot. Like that took the lead in my life of what I called myself or how I saw myself or really how I approach people in situations.
Yeah.
And I leaned on that. I leaned on that heavy, like, no, I'm like, this is how I am. This is how I'm built, this, that, and the other. Right. You know what? Issues come up. I don't have to say nothing. Strong, quiet, strong. I'm going to go do something though.
I'm that quiet storm.
Yeah. I mean, I thought strength was built more in action, right? Which is true to some extent.
Right.
Right. But when I went back and said, okay, you know what? That's myself. Am I made in God's image? We'll get into with all that detail. But like, am I made? If I believe that, and then my God is a speaking God, right? And I would love to reference this so we're not just speaking out in theory exactly really what kind of brought me to this point. So if you're quiet and you're kind of wrestling with, why we don't need to say much and issues come up and you're avoiding them and all this other kind of stuff, we're not naturally built or designed to be that. Now, there's a time and place, to hold your peace, but we're not naturally designed to say, you know what, well, I really just don't say much. Because we're made in God's image. And I'm just going to read some verses here. It's kind of long, but I think it's going to just drive some points home, right? And maybe to help maybe clarify. We can talk about it after I finish reading this here. And I'm literally going from Genesis 1:1.
Okay.
Just starting off, right? So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, okay, verse 3, let there be light. And there was light. I'm going to skip down to verse 6. And God said, let the vault between the waters to separate water from water. All right. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 9. And God said, let the water under the sky gather in one place and let the dry ground appear.
Mm-hmm.
When I read this and kind of just put it in my mind and to say, okay, hold on. When God first started doing anything, he spoke it, right? He spoke about it and created it, right? And for me, that was revelatory from the aspect of like, man, I was designed to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I was designed to confront things.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to do that in the right way. I was designed to speak about things. I was designed to answer questions. I was designed to, you know what? Hey, no, be a solution versus with my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me, particularly as a quiet person,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I believe that, hey, this is how I was designed to be. To say, no, hold on. Let's reframe the thinking of who you thought you were and who really God made you to be. And I reference these scriptures to really drive that point home.
Yeah, you said a whole lot in there. The first thing I want to start with is the discussion like that quiet people don't talk or the introverts don't talk. It's really a misnomer, like a misdiagnosis almost of their personality. And I think it's important to recognize that it's not just talking to talk. It's not just, hey, just to be a part of anything. Like it's not seeking validation, but it's really contributing to the relationship. Like, what is your perspective? What do you have to say on this? Because just because you're quiet by personality, that's your natural default, doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer. But I think sometimes what happens is those of us that are talkers take up so much of and this is something we can talk about too, take up so much of the kind of the air in the room that we don't give other people that might not be as as pushy with their perspective an opportunity to contribute. So I think that's part of the communication game. If you know that you're the talker, making sure that you give opportunity for the person that might not be as vocal as you. It doesn't mean that they don't have a perspective. Like we have that kind of mixed up. Like, oh, they're just really quiet. They don't really have anything to say. They might just be waiting on you to stop talking, or they might want to be asked what their perspective is versus them just throwing it out into space. So I think it's important to recognize the distinction between the quiet person and maybe the more vocal person, because quiet people often, I can't say always, but often are very observant because they're not talking, like they're watching and they're listening. So they very frequently do have something of great relevance to add in a dialogue, but they're also not necessarily going to push their way. I think the second thing that you hit on when you're talking about biblical references, and you used all of those as we see through scripture, God entering time, like our system of time, there is really the necessity of understanding that we were created in God's image and we are to be communicators, both vertically and horizontally, and how it impacts what we create and how we create. And if we look at God creating the world through language, what are you creating in your language or not creating in your language? Because you can cause disaster through what you say. You can cause wholeness through what you say. That's spouse to spouse, friend to friend, parent to child. All of these things, how we create really anything, starts with how we talk about it, how we see it. First, how we think about it, then how we speak about it, and then what we do with it. So if we think somebody is trash and we say we think you're trash, then when they are trash, you have to look at, what did I say? That's the whole concept of the power of life and death is in the tongue. I can speak over my spouse blessing, and I can speak life and encouragement. And even if we're not talking from a biblical perspective, you can build somebody up. Like, that's what affirmations are. Hey, I'm telling you how I see you. I'm telling you what's inside of you so that they can hear that repeatedly and believe that. And once they start really honing in and really saying, yeah, that is me, then they start acting like that thing. That's what I do over my kids. I hope that's what you do over your kids. I tell my children how I expect them to behave. And they don't always do it, but I'm going to keep speaking over them. You're a leader. You're a great listener. You're a good friend. You're smart. And I speak all of these things. And as they start to hear it and they start to believe it, then they start to act like this. Hey, and they don't require another voice to tell them who they are. Because sometimes, and we've talked about this before, sometimes the thing that you're not telling your spouse, they seek for somewhere else. And they get it that somewhere else. And it doesn't mean there's not conflict. It doesn't mean I have to wake up every morning and I'm irritated with my husband and I have to say, you're a great guy, you've done everything right. That's not true. We're not talking about lying. And we're not talking about, avoiding conflict. As a matter of fact, confronting conflict is part of good communication, not just saying, oh, well, we're just going to push it in the back of our minds. So I think starting with that kind of scriptural foundation and that moral background really infuses what I say as really important, really critical. It's not just saying something, it's really speaking life or death.
No, that's good. That's good. You reference a scripture. I don't know where it's at, but I know you said it. The life of death is in the power of the tongue. Mm-hmm. This is for all my quiet people, right? Well, I'm not speaking, so I ain't killing nothing, right? That's what we kind of think. Mm-hmm. We oftentimes we reference that particular verse or scripture as somebody that you got to say it in order for it to die, or you can cause harm or good, whatever, right? Yeah. But oftentimes us as quiet people, I point to myself or maybe others out there like it, that don't speak as much. One way for something to die, and we got this from our bishop, is say, just don't talk to it. Mm-hmm. And once I heard that, like, okay, wow. I think he gave a reference about a baby not being touched or something, not being talked to, and how the difference is or whatever. What happened when the fact they weren't being talked to or weren't being touched in this case as well. But the whole concept was like, hey, you want something to die, just don't talk to it. Yeah. Right? And that's just powerful. That just hit me like when I heard that, like, okay, wow, I've been sitting back, maybe being quiet and holding stuff in and thinking I'm like being proactive. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, I'm not causing additional conflict.
Yeah, I'm just not going to say anything. So like, I think a lot of people think it's not going to get any worse. Like, right. No, it definitely does. And this is true in horticulture too, because a lot of people that study like plants and things like that. I remember, I don't know if your family did this, but I remember when my big mama would plant stuff, she would talk to the dirt. She would talk to the plant like, okay, we're going to set you here. Now you go ahead and grow. You go ahead. I'm going to cover you up. Right. Like, it wasn't even like this speaking to it was just speaking over, okay, my expectation, you're going to go ahead and grow. And it's the same with plants. Like if there are plants, they say you talk to your plants like, oh, you look so green. You're looking so beautiful. And they grow. And I don't, there's lots of thought processes about it. But I think that that principle is true. If you're in an organization or a company and somebody is a bad seed and you never address that culture starts to permeate, that negativity starts to decrease the morale of the organization. So it's true in every sense that if you don't address something, both negative, if you're not speaking to it, you're like, well, that's them, that's not me, that's their problem, then it's going to eventually become your problem. Mm-hmm. It's eventually going to spread. It's going to be a problem for everybody because you're not saying something. What do you want to say? I see your face. I'm seeing your face. I already know. My mind just,
wheels are turning 1 million miles an hour. So this is like a real-time issue. Okay. Right? Okay. I'm saying a real-time issue. Okay. And we're going to play it out just as in real time, right? So oftentimes when quiet people, see this, maybe people that maybe aren't quite just as forward with their talking or with their speech or with their addressing something, and they're having conversation. If there's like a pause, a brief pause, the people that talk often they feel it. Mm-hmm. They automatically, I think it's automatically jump into that space, right? In reality, my quiet people can tell me, I know I'm telling the truth because it happens to us all the time. We may pause for a brief second and be like, and then the person that talks more frequently would jump into that space. When in reality, we would just have a second to gather the next thought, because that's how we operate, and then speak. So I'm just giving a clue for people that may be in relationships where, one of you talk, one of you don't as much. The person that talks has to be it's a different flow of the conversation. When two talkers are going, literally, y'all might be like almost like verbally fighting to get the words right, and it's like it's natural. It's not even like it seems kind of like, wow, they're like going at it, but no, y'all just talking. Y'all just talking. And for us that maybe not that's built that way, we're like, wow, we can't. Where do we get in? So what we end up doing is, I can't get in. They not even taking a breath talking. So we sit back like, okay, well, I guess they don't want to hear what I have to say. That's a real. So I'm just. It happens, right? I think that maybe hopefully helps somebody in that arena just to kind of put that together. And the person that you got to find your time too. The quiet person can't just be sitting back waiting for 15 seconds to be dead air either.
Like double dutch.
Yeah, we have to So we got to be assertive. If we have something to say, like, hold on 1 second, let me say this. Or, and look, we kind of like, that's kind of rude to us. But to a talker, it's like, no, I got something to say. You need to hear this. It's a positive thing for the talker.
I feel like he's taking shots at me right now.
I'm not taking any shots at anybody. No, if you throw a rock and hit a dog and he holler, I'm just saying, I personally am not taking any shots though.
I know you're not. I'm just teasing. But it's a conversation we've had before because I'm obviously a little bit more vocal in our relationship. And I think sometimes, and it's not even the pause. Like there have been times that I thought he was done for real. Because to me, he says it's like 10 seconds or whatever. It'd be like a minute.
It does not be a minute. She always thinks that you exaggerating. You already got that. I'm got that hyperbole going on over here. He said,
wait. And he'd be like, I wasn't done. I was thinking. I'd be like,
it's not a minute.
Like
it's
conversations.
It was not a minute. Next point. Go ahead.
You see that pause? I wanted to say something, but I was waiting. I was trying to give him opportunity.
She set me up for that one. Point number 2, where we at?
So take that, all of us talkers. We have to be willing to give them opportunity, and even asking keywords. This is something we talk about when we dive into some counseling with couples, like asking them, was there anything else you wanted to add? And making sure that you're not causing offense. Like the tone in which you say things, like is there anything else? Like, obviously you're shutting down, but the quiet person also does tend to be the shutdown person because it takes so much for them to get their get their idea out, and then you either cut them off or you don't allow them to really expand, or they say something and now not saying you have to do yours or hands. I use my hands, but you jump on top of their words before they're able to express themselves. Then they no longer want to even say it because you're not honoring what they're trying to communicate. So just keeping in mind, different communication styles are going to require different collaboration. And the best time to talk about it is before you get into an argument, because inevitably, if you're in a relationship long enough, there's going to be a time where you're not seeing eye to eye. So even understanding your partner better, or your child or your parent, to know, okay, when there's conflict, I need to make sure that I allow Michael or whomever your partner is an opportunity to get out what they're thinking and feeling, because I know how I feel and I will definitely address conflict, but making sure that it's not pushing my will, whereas he doesn't have a place to contribute. So just a thought. But speaking of conflict, interestingly enough, when you were prepping on this show, you started talking about some of the challenges and how words, not only can they tear down and build up, but they can become really explosive. They can make something that should be, something minor turn into something major because of a dropped ball, something that you didn't say that you needed to say. And now there's conflict over something that really could have been adjusted with just a minor conflict. So I want to tell a little story.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we found this article. It was written in 2014, and it is from the author of the book, The Sleepwalkers, How Europe Went to War, author Christopher Clark. And he was doing an interview with Robert Siegel of NPR, and they were talking about the World War. So this is what happened, and I'm going to kind of go from my notes here because I want to make sure I get all the names and locations correct. So there was this plot to kill our Archduke Ferdinand. He was the heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Archduke and his wife were visiting Bosnia-Herzegovina. I practiced. They had this minimum security, so they were planning on traveling to this location. They had minimum security, but their route was published publicly, so the public knew exactly where they were going and the pathway they were going to take on this trip. Well, en route, one of the cars was bombed, and several people were injured. So they decided, you know what, we're going to take another route. We're not going to go this way. It's too dangerous. Unfortunately, nobody told the Czech-speaking driver of the Archduke. So the driver kept going on the route that they had planned on going, the one that was published and known to the public. Well, Clark, the writer of this book, says that there was this miscommunication took the royal couple in front of this person that was on the route that was going to assassinate them. And his name was Gravilo Princip. He was an assassin that was stationed along that path and was going to kill the Archduke. The story is told that he went into this general store and was coming out and eating a sandwich. And right as he came out, this motor car, or the car that was holding the Archduke that was supposed to have switched routes, that was still on that route, was right in front of him. So here is the assassin. Here is the car right in front of him. And they tell the story that the car suddenly stops in front of this assassin. And to his astonishment, somebody was yelling to the driver, "You idiot, you're not supposed to go down this road. Stop the car and back up." So they were trying to turn around the car. And instead of being able to turn around the car to get the Archduke out of danger, the assassin, Clark writes, as the car comes to a halt, he took 2 shots, and this started the World War. So it's really interesting that this was a dropped ball. That communication wasn't passed properly to the right person, and this started the World War because of a miscommunication. And when I think about that in the context of a relationship, sometimes we're communicating but not to the right person. We're telling our girlfriend this is what's going on, or we're telling our dude, or we're telling our parent, or we're telling somebody else what's going on, and not telling the right person. And because the communication is happening, but it's not happening where and when it needs to, then there is a catastrophe in the relationship that leads to a greater problem. What are your thoughts?
No, first and foremost, you did a great job on those names. She gave me a hard time about it. You know what? You give me the hard name to read. I said, yes, I'm going to read the Bible. You're going to read them hard names.
The Bible has some hard names,
it do, man. I didn't pick the ones that had that in this one. So you're right.
You selective.
I'm selective, yeah. But no, first of all, it's a very interesting story, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not only interesting, it literally, what you just said, that started World War I. Mm-hmm. Miscommunication started World War I.
With this assassination that wasn't supposed to happen had they took the other route.
Right. You see that pause? See?
Yeah. I was adding. I was contributing.
I was joking.
See, now he's gonna be on something.
I'm being petty a little bit, okay? I'm being petty a little bit. Hey, something, it was funny to me, sorry.
Okay, go. This is why I jump in, go.
No, so the whole idea of that miscommunication played a significant role in really starting something major, right? And if I just take a step back and say, you know what, how many times have misunderstandings or miscommunication allowed couples to either make a decision like, hey, I'm leaving you, or they got a bad eye, like, man, I can't believe you did that, or, you purposely forgot the kids. Well, I don't know, your phone might have been off and then get the text message and you left the kids at school and now the school calling you and you and now y'all at it.
Yeah.
All simply, right, because of miscommunication. The idea of miscommunication can play such a big factor. In my mind, when I read that article, heard you read it, is like, wow, something very simple can easily turn into something very big if there's not the communication or miscommunication. It wasn't even intentional. Mm-hmm. Right? Sometimes miscommunication necessarily is not something that you intentionally do, but it happens. And then how do we recover from? How do we protect against that?
Yeah.
Right? We got dynamic with blended families and this, that, and the other, or work or travel. Right? We try to, and on our best days, right? And I say best day because we're not perfect. Our best day, hey, if I'm traveling, I'm late from work or this, that, and the other, we try to communicate. Yeah. Text, call. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be later than I thought it was going to be, or I got to go somewhere. Or on the other end, hey, if I have travel coming up, or you got some things coming up, events, this, that, and the other, right, we try to proactively try to avoid the miscommunication. Right. Does it work all the time? No, I'd be like, man, okay, I'm supposed to be watching the game on Saturday. Well, we got this party to go to. At what time is the party? At 3. Well, the game is 3. Okay, miscommunication. Right? It happens. But she's laughing because that's real life. It does happen. But it's just the idea we try to avoid those. And those are minor, but it could turn into something big. Oh, she don't care about me. Mm-hmm. She just planning stuff without me, this, that, and those seeds could get planted. Yeah. Right? And cause a bigger issue. And I think for couples, you got to be aware of that, right? We got to be aware of it. And we try to avoid against. Can you avoid every single miscommunication? Probably not. Right. But if you just an idea say, hey, even the small things, you even got me on this. Hey, if something changes, we had a meeting at 6 and it got moved to 8, just let me know. That's a minor detail, but it could cause a major problem.
Yeah.
So things like that point to my mind to say, hey, think about the communication, what's happening, what could be miscommunicated, what are the details in it. You good with planning and, calendars and all kind of stuff, which I'm like, man, we don't need all that. Yes, we do, y'all. I didn't think I needed it as we trying to build our family dynamics, but I started to appreciate, okay, where's that calendar? Where we at? You know what I mean? That Google Calendar, you put it, is it in the calendar? Okay, good. I got it. But it's just, it's the whole idea is trying to avoid miscommunication.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, when I consider the story, it didn't start off badly. I think that's something that like we have to, and we've said this before too, believing the best about your partner, but also addressing when there's something that happens. So I believe that he meant to tell me, or he didn't realize that it was going to cause a problem, instead of believing like, you just didn't care about my schedule. Like you said, you just didn't care that I wanted to watch the game, and ensuring that is consistently, that you're looking after what's important and valuable to them. And that, you might have to revisit a calendar or whatever works for you so that you can have these consistent conversations over time. And over time you build goodwill. So like in I'll get back to that, but you build goodwill by saying, hey, you have a game, like your team plays, my team might not play until 6. So I might not think about your team playing at noon. And I'll be like, oh, what time does your team play on Saturday? Or what time does your team play on Sunday? Because you guys know we're sports people. So what time? Okay, well, we have this. And then having a dialogue. Are we going to record the game? Are we going to go to this? But that builds goodwill. Like, okay, it's not that just she didn't care. It's not that it didn't matter to him, because now we're having conversation, building around the things that are important to the other person. And that's because of those little things. There's like a saying, like the little something. I don't know. I'll come back to that. But those little things add up, and both for the good and the bad. You keep doing good things, you sow good seed, you're going to get a good harvest. You keep doing bad things or harmful things, your crops are going to be destroyed. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. I wanted to get to this last thing before we run out of time for today. Talking does not equate clear communication. I want to give you the last word on this because I've said a lot. But talking does not mean that you are being clear. So take it.
Yeah. So I give my last word on this, right? And I can try to tie in back, us as quiet people with the godly communication got to be able to speak. We got to embrace that, right? Here's the flip side of it, right? Where you may be a talker, and the fact that you're actually using words, you think you're actually clearly communicating, and you're using a lot of words, and that still doesn't mean that you're clearly communicating. Using colorful words, it still does. I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at them. There's no shade at all. She's actually, she's worked with me on community. Anyway, but
I'm not offended.
Yeah.
I'm working
people, people think I'm looking at you talking to you like, no, I'm not. I was like, But anyway.
I'm not offended.
At any rate, though, the idea that people often equate the fact that they're actually communicating a lot of words or saying a lot of things or explaining it in a certain way that it's clear to everyone. And that's not always true.
Right.
So I think people have to keep that in mind. And this is for my talkers out there, like, hey, just because you may be actually saying a lot of things, it may not be as clear as you believe, right? It may be clear in your head, but it may not be clear to your spouse or your significant other or your kids, whatever have you, whoever you're talking to, that it's impacting them like you think it should. So I think particularly the talkers, just to be understanding that there may be a disconnect. You wonder, why come we had this talk so many times and this, that, and the other, or they not understanding me. It could be they not understand you. Could be it. It could be it, but also could be, hey, maybe your words or what you're saying and how you're communicating it is not as clear as you would like to believe.
Oh, I want to add one quick thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so there's and finding the method in which your partner hears. So if it's a bullet point, and it might change depending on the challenge. So knowing when is a good time of day to talk, what words might be triggers negatively and not incorporating that tone, like how you talk to your partner, where maybe it's not best to talk to them while laying in the bed about to go to sleep because they're not going to remember the next day, or those kinds of things. All of that really matters. So keeping all of that in mind, we definitely thank you so much for joining us today here on Fused. Please let us know if you have any comments or questions. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure you check out our website, fusedmarriages.com. Let's talk about it.